After studying this module, you shall be able to understand the concept of economic system and its different units. Know how the scarce resources of an economy are allocated for economic growth in different economic systems adopted in the world. Analyze the impact of ecosystems on the economic environment of the nation and vice versa. Gain an insight with regard to the type of planning required in different economic systems. An economy is a system by which people get a living. It is a collection of production units, for example, farms, factories, service centers, government offices, schools, colleges, banks, etc. On the other hand, an economic system has been referred to as an organization for the purpose of satisfying man's wants from the utilization of the means of production at his disposal. The nature of an economic system relies on the agencies which are permitted to own and put to use the productive resources, extent of individuals' initiative permitted in the economic activity, types of incentives offered to employees, and the process of price determination. An economic system may be defining what to produce, how to produce it, and for whom to be produced. Depending on the products produced and the environment, certain economic strategies will be more successful than others. So, an economy is a man-made organization for the satisfaction of human wants. According to A.J. Brown, an economy is a system by which people get living. The way man attempts to get a living differs in major respects from time to time and from place to place. In primitive times, get a living was simple, but with growth of civilization, it has become much more complex. Here it is important to note that the way person earns his or her living must be legal and fair. Unfair and illegal means such as robbery, smuggling may earn income for oneself, but should not be taken into consideration as gainful economic activity or a system of get a living. It will therefore be appropriate to call that economy is a framework where all economic activities are carried out. Some of the salient features of an economy are: 1. Economic institutions are man-made, thus an economy is what we make it. 2. Economic institutions can be created, destroyed, replaced or changed. For example, the capitalism was replaced by communism in 1917 in USSR, and communism was destroyed in 1989 through a series of economic reforms by former USSR. In India, after independence in 1947, through economic and social reforms, we abolished zamindari system and introduced many land reforms. 3. Level of economic activities keep on changing. 4. Producers and consumers are the same persons. Thus, they have a dual role. As producers, they work and produce certain goods and services and consume the same as consumers. 5th, production, consumption and investment are the vital processes of an economy. 6. In modern complex economies, we use money as a medium of exchange. 7. Nowadays, the government intervention in the economy is considered undesirable. We shall now throw some light on the types of economies. As we know that an economy is a man-made organization which is created, destroyed or changed as per the requirement of the society. We can differentiate in various types of economic systems on the basis of following criteria: on the basis of ownership and control over means of production or resources. Resources or means of production remain either in private ownership with full individual freedom to use them for the profit motive, or they can be in collective ownership, that is government control, and can be used for the collective welfare of the society as a whole. Based on the criteria of degree of individual freedom and profit motive, economies are as follows: A. Capitalistic or free enterprise economy. B. Socialist or centrally planned economy. C. Mixed economy. A. Capitalist economy. The capitalist or free enterprise economy is the oldest form of economy. Earlier, economists supported the policy of laissez-faire, meaning leave free. They advocated minimum government intervention in the economic activities. The following are the main features of a capitalist economy. 1. Private property. In a capitalism system, all the individuals have the right to own property. An individual can acquire property and use it for the benefit of his own family. There is no restriction on the ownership of land, machines, mines, factories, and to earn profit and accumulate wealth. After the death of a person, the property or the wealth is transferred to the legal heirs. Thus, the institution of private property is sustained over time by the right of inheritance. 2. Freedom of enterprise. That is, in a capitalist economy, the government does not coordinate production decisions of the citizens. Individuals are free to choose any occupation. Freedom of enterprise implies that business firms are free to acquire resources and use them in the production of any good or service. The firms are also free to sell their product in the markets of their choice. A worker is free to choose his or her employer. In small business units, owner himself takes the risk of production and earns profits or loss for himself. But in modern corporations, the shareholders take risks, whereas paid directors manage business. Thus, the individual supervision of one's own capital is now no longer required to earn profits. Government or any other agency does not impose restrictions or obstacles in the way of workers to enter or leave a particular industry. A worker chooses that occupation where his income is maximum. Third, consumer sovereignty. In a capitalist economy, consumers are like a king. They have the full freedom to spend their income on goods and services that give them maximum satisfaction. In capitalist system, production is guided by consumers' choices. The freedom of consumer is called consumer's sovereignty. Fourth, profit motive. Self-interest is a guiding principle in capitalism. Entrepreneurs know that they will own the profit or loss after the payment to all other factors of production. Therefore, they are always motivated to maximize their residual profits by minimizing cost and maximizing revenue. This makes the capitalist economy an efficient and self-regulated economy. Fifth, competition. There are no restrictions on the entry and exit of firms in a capitalist system. The large number of producers is available to supply a particular good or service, and therefore no firm can earn more than normal profit. Competition is a fundamental feature of capitalist economy and essential to safeguard against consumers' exploitation. Although due to large size and product distinction, monopolistic tendencies have grown these days. Still, the competition can be seen among large number of firms. Sixth, importance of markets and prices. The important feature of capitalism, like private property, freedom of choice, profit motive and competition, make a room for free and efficient functioning of price mechanism. Capitalism is essentially a market economy where every commodity has a price. The forces of demand and supply in an industry determine this price. Firms which are able to adjust at a given price earn normal profit, and those who fail to do so often quit the industry. A producer will produce those goods which give him more profit. 7. Absence of government interference. In a free enterprise or a capitalist economy, the price system plays an important role of coordinating agent. Government intervention and support is not required. The role of government is to help in free and efficient functioning of the markets. Capitalism in today's world. Pure capitalism is not seen in the world nowadays. The economies of USA, UK, France, Netherlands, Spain, Portugal, Australia, etc. are known as capitalistic countries with active role of their respective government in economic development. B. Socialist economy. In the socialist or centrally planned economies, all the productive resources are owned and controlled by the government in overall interest of the society. A central planning authority takes the decisions. The socialist economy has the following main features. 1. Collective ownership of means of production. In a socialist economy, means of production are owned by the government on behalf of the people. The institution of private property is abolished and no individual is allowed to own any production unit and accumulate wealth and transfer it to their heirs. However, people may own some durable goods for their personal use. 2. Social welfare objective. The decisions are taken by the government at macro level with the objective of maximization of social welfare in mind rather than maximization of individual profits. The forces of demand and supply do not play an important role. Careful decisions are taken with the welfare objective in mind. 3. Central planning. Economic planning is an essential feature of a socialist economy. The central planning authority, keeping the national priorities and availability of resources in mind, allocates resources. Government takes all economic decisions regarding production, consumption and investments, keeping in mind the present and future needs. The planning authorities fix targets for various sectors and ensure efficient utilization of resources. 4. Reduction in inequalities. The institutions of private property and inheritance are at the root of inequalities of income and wealth in a capitalist economy. By abolishing these twin institutions, a socialist economic system is able to reduce the inequalities of income. It is important to note that perfect equality in income and wealth is neither desirable nor practicable. 5th, no class conflict. In capitalist economy, the interests of the workers and management are different. Both of them want to maximize their own individual profit or earnings. This results in class conflict in a capitalist economy. In socialism, there is no competition among classes. Every person is a worker, so there is no class conflict. All are co-workers. Socialism in today's world. Countries such as Russia, China and many Eastern European countries are said to be socialist countries, but they are changing now and encouraging liberalization in their countries for their economic development. C. Mixed economy. A mixed economy combines the best features of capitalism and socialism. Thus, mixed economy has some elements of both free enterprise or capitalist economy as well as a government controlled socialist economy. The public and private sectors coexist in mixed economies. The main characteristics of mixed economy are as follows. 1. Coexistence of public and private sector. The private sector consists of production units that are owned privately and work on the basis of profit motive. The public sector consists of production units owned by the government and works on the basis of social welfare. The areas of economic activities of each sector are generally demarcated. Government uses its various policies, for example, licensing policy, taxation policy, price policy, monetary policy and fiscal policy to control and regulate the private sector. 2. Individual freedom. Individuals take up economic activities to maximize their personal income. They are free to choose any occupation and consume as per their choice. But producers are not given the freedom to exploit consumers and laborers. Government puts some restrictions keeping in mind the welfare of the people. For instance, government may put restrictions on the production and consumption of harmful goods, but within rules and regulations and restrictions imposed by the government for the welfare of the society, the private sector enjoyed complete freedom. The government prepares long-term plans and decides the roles to be played by the private and public sectors in the development of the economy. The public sector is under direct control of the government. As such, production targets and plans are formulated for them directly. The private sector is provided encouragement, incentive, support and subsidies to work as per national priorities. 4. Price mechanism. Prices play a significant role in the allocation of resources. For some sectors, the policy of administered prices is adopted. Government also provides price subsidies to help the target group. The aim of the government is to maximize the welfare of the masses. For those who cannot afford to purchase the goods at the market prices, government makes the good available either free of cost or at below market prices, that is subsidized. Thus, in a mixed economy, people at large enjoy individual freedom and government support to protect the interests of weaker sections of the society. Indian economy is considered a mixed economy as it has well-defined areas for functioning of public and private sectors and economic planning. Even countries such as USA, UK, etc., which were known as capitalist countries, are also called mixed economies now because of the active role of their government in economic development. We shall focus on the impact of economic system on the economic environment and nation. Now, what is the impact of economic system on business? Nowadays is vitally affected by the economic, social, legal, technological and political factors. These factors collectively form business environment. Business environment as such is a total of all external forces which affect the organization and operation of business. The environment of an organization has got internal, operational and general lives. Managers must be aware of these three environmental levels. The term business environment implies those external forces, factors and institutions that are beyond the control of individual business organizations and their management and affect the business enterprise. It implies all external forces within which a business enterprise operates. Business environment influence the functioning of the business system. Thus, business environment may be defined as all those conditions and forces which are external to the business and are beyond the individual business unit, but it operates within it. These forces are customers, creditors, competitors, government, social cultural organizations, political parties, national and international organizations, etc. Some of those forces affect the business directly, while some others have indirect effect on the business. Business environment as such are classified into the following three major categories. They are internal environment, operational environment, general or external environment. Both internal and operational environment are the creation of enterprise itself. The factors of external or general environment are broad in scope and least controlled and influenced by the management of the enterprises. Now, all these factors are as below. Economic dimensions on environment. Economic environment refers to the aggregate of the nature of economic system of the country, the structural anatomy of the economy to economic policies of the government, the organization of the capital market, the nature of factor endowment, business cycles, the socio-economic infrastructure, etc. A successful businessman and nation visualizes the external factors affecting the business and nation, anticipating the prospective market situations and makes suitable to get the maximum with minimum cost. Social dimension on environment. The social dimension or environment of a nation determines the value system of the society, which in turn affects the functioning of the business. Sociological factors such as cost structure, customs and conventions, cultural heritage, view towards wealth and income, and scientific methods, respect of seniority, mobility of labor, etc., have far-reaching impact on the business. These factors determine the work culture and mobility of labor, work groups, etc. For instance, the nature of goods and services to be produced depends upon the demand of the people, which in turn is affected by their attitudes, customs, so as cultural values, fashion, etc. Socio-cultural environment determines the code of conduct the business should follow. The social groups such as trade unions or consumer forum will interfere if the business follows the unethical practices. For instance, if the firm is not paying fair wages to its business and is indulging in black marketing or adulteration, consumer forums and various government agencies will take action against the business. Political environment. The political environment of a nation is influenced by the political organizations such as philosophy of political parties, ideology of government or party in power, nature and extent of bureaucracy influence of primary groups, etc. Political stability in the country, foreign policy, defense and military policy, image of the country and its leaders in and outside the country. The political environment of the nation influences the business to a great extent. Legal regulatory environment. Legal environment includes flexibility and adaptability of law and other legal rules governing the business. It may include the exact rulings and decisions of the courts. These affect the business and its managers to a great extent. For instance, in 1992, the Supreme Court ordered the closure of a number of tanneries in Kanpur as they were polluting Holy Ganga. In August 1993, several foundries around the famous Taj Mahal were ordered to be closed down because of air pollution caused by them had adverse impact on the whiteness of Taj Mahal. Technical dimensions or environment. The business in a country is generally influenced by the technological development. The technology adopted by the industry determines the types and the quality of goods and services to be produced and the type and quality of plant and equipment to be used. Technological environment influences the business in terms of investment in technology, consistent application of technology and the effects of technology on markets. In India, advancements in automation and information technology have posed the challenging situation for the organization in future. After knowing types of economies and the impact of economic system on the economic environment and nation, efficient utilization of scarce resources is important for any economy. And why it is important for the economy? The allocation of resources is an economic theory concerned with the discovery of how nations, companies or individuals distribute economic resources or inputs in the economic marketplace. Traditional business inputs are land, labor and capital. There are three major systems that can be distinguished in many parts of the world economy. In capitalist economies, economic decisions are made by the individuals. The unfettered interaction of the individuals and companies in the marketplace determines how resources are allocated and goods are distributed. Individuals choose how to invest their personal resources, what training to pursue, what jobs to take, what goods or services to produce, and individuals decide what to consume. Within a pure market economy, the government is entirely absent from economic affairs. The United States in the late 19th century, at the height of laissez-faire era, was about as close as we have seen to a pure market economy in modern practice. Socialist economy. An economy where supply and price are regulated by government rather than market forces is a socialist economy. Government planners decide which goods and services are produced and how they are distributed, typically associated with a socialist or communist country. The means of production are publicly owned in the form of state control or as a collective ownership, and various committees make decisions regarding their use. The government owns scarce resources and all economic decisions related to the allocation of resources and investment is under the control of an authoritative body, that is government. There is a market for consumer goods and labor, but very often the consumers do not have the choice to spend their money in a way they would like, as the state sets production targets and growth rates according to its own view of people's wants. Income and wealth distribution is decided by the state. Therefore, market prices have little part in informing resource allocation decisions and queuing rations for scarce goods. Advantages. Duplication of resources cannot be eliminated. More control to achieve goals of economic and social well-being. No inflation as prices are controlled. Disadvantages. Loss of independence and free choice. Lack of variety and quality of goods and services available for consumers. Extreme administration and supervision levels result in high outlay. It is also known as command economic system or planned economy. The government controls the economy. The state decides how to use and distribute resources. The government regulates prices and wages. It may even determine what sort of work individuals do. Socialism is a type of command economic system. Historically, The government has assumed varying degrees of control over the economy in socialist countries. In some, only major industries have been subjected to government management. In others, the government has exercised far more extensive control over the economy. The classic failed example of a command economy was the communist Soviet Union. The collapse of the communist bloc in the late 1980s led to the demise of many command economies around the world. Cuba continues to hold on to its planned economy even today, a mixed economic system. It combines elements of the market and command economy. Many economic decisions are made in the market by individuals, but the government also plays a role in the allocation and distribution of resources. The United States today, like most advanced nations, is a mixed economy. The eternal question for mixed economies is just what the right mix between the public and private sectors of the economy should be. We shall now discuss why it matters today. Half of the 20th century went down as a global battle between defenders of free markets, that is, democratic capitalist nations led by the United States, and believers in command economies, the communist bloc led by the Soviet Union. The US and USSR never went to war against each other directly, but dozens of smaller yet still tragic and significant wars unfolded around the world as bitter fights over economic systems turned bloody. Korea, Vietnam, Nicaragua, Afghanistan, Angola, millions of people died in the various hot theatres of a Cold War fought to decide whether markets or states should control economic affairs. The great irony was that the Cold War finally ended not on a battlefield, but because the Soviet economy finally self-destructed by the late 1980s. For most of the world, the Soviet collapse proved that command economies were simply inferior to the market-dominated mixed economies of the capitalist world. Of course, China still ruled politically by an authoritarian Communist Party, even though its economy is now more mixed, if not exactly free, is now the biggest creditor nation to the United States. Economic planning is the art of taking major economic decisions, what and how much to be produced and to whom it is to be allocated by the concise decision of a determinate authority on the basis of a comprehensive survey of the economic system as a whole. There are two basic solutions to the economic problems, namely free markets and central planning. Let us move on and discuss the type of planning required in different economic systems. So far, we have discussed different problems, their causes, and allocation of scarce resources in different economic systems. For the development of the nation, it is important for any economy to identify the type of planning required for their development. Capitalist economy. Markets enable mutually beneficial exchange between producers and consumers, and systems that rely on markets to solve the economic problems are called market economies. In a free market economy, resources are allocated through the interaction of free and self-directed market forces. This means that what to produce are determined by the consumers, how to produce is determined by producers, and who gets the products depends on the purchasing power of the consumers. Market economies work by allowing the direct interaction of consumers and producers who are pursuing their own self-interest. The pursuit of self-interest is at the heart of free market economies. Socialist or command economies. The second solution to the economic problem is the allocation of scarce resources by the government or an agency appointed by the government. This method is referred to as central planning, and economies that exclusively use central planning are called command economies. In other words, governments direct or command resources to be used in particular ways. For example, governments can force citizens to pay taxes and decide how many roads or hospitals are to be built. Command economies have certain advantages over free market economies, especially in terms of the coordination of scarce resources at times of crisis, such as a war or following a natural disaster. Free markets also fail at times to allocate resources efficiently, so remedies often involve the allocation of resources by the government to compensate for these failures. Command economies have certain advantages over free market economies, especially in terms of the coordination of scarce resources at times of crisis such as a war or a natural disaster. Free markets also fail at times to allocate resources efficiently. So, remedies often involve the allocation of resources by the government to compensate for these failures. Mixed economies. There is a third type of economy involving a combination of market forces and central planning called mixed economies. Mixed economies may have a distinct private sector where resources are allocated primarily by market forces such as the grocery sector of UK economy. Mixed economies may also have a distinct public sector where resources are allocated mainly by the government such as defense, police and fire services. In many sectors, resources are allocated by a combination of markets and planning such as healthcare and which have both public and private provision. In reality, all economies are mixed, though there are wide variations in the amount of mix and the balance between public and private sector. For example, in Cuba, the government allocates the vast majority of resources, while in Europe, most economies have an even mix between markets and planning. Economic systems can be evaluated in terms of how efficient they are in achieving economic objectives. We shall now recapitulate what we have learned so far. The purpose of every economy is to satisfy human wants by using limited or scarce resources available and known to a society. These wants can be satisfied by production and consumption of goods and services. For production, the factors of production are engaged in some economic activities. These economic activities bring income to the economic agents that can either be consumed or saved and invested. On account of these gainful economic activities and accumulated earnings, some countries grow fast while others cannot attain such a high growth rate. As a result, some economies attain the status of developed economies while others remain underdeveloped or developing economies. They are also known as rich and poor economies. We can look at economies on the basis of ownership of resources. The resources available may be in private ownership or in the collective ownership. Thus, there are different ways to look at the economy and its level of development. In this chapter, we have explained how scarce resources of the nation are allocated in different economic systems effectively and type planning required for the development of the nation and society.